My name is John Paul Sharp, and I am performing a workshop with some colleagues, and these are all writers of theater and local theater in Seattle, Washington. So how many of you guys know about generational theory? Well, as you can see, I recently conducted a generational theory workshop for a group of colleagues who write for stage, film, and books in Seattle. And the purpose of this experience was for me to further my knowledge in developmental theory over the lifespan, but also to create an experience of growth for my colleagues and hopefully benefit them in a professional way. So the process for this learning experience started with me giving just a general background on the Strauss Howe generational theory, including a 5-page handout that I put together from resources that I searched online. And after I gave them that general background, I asked them if they had any questions. I answered a few questions, and then we really got into having discussions. And so I asked writers to talk about what generation they come from and their parents' generation. And then I asked them to talk about different characters that they're currently writing with. What generation does that character come from? What time period does that character come from? And what about the relationships that that character is having with others? What about those people and the generations they live in? And how do the conflicts and the communication styles between these characters come into play based on the generations that they came from and the stage that they're in their lives? So it was just very, very interesting, and there was actually quite a lot of personal sharing that took place. But instead of letting me tell you what I learned, how about I tell you what they learned?
I'm Melissa King.
I'm Darcy Harrison.
My name is Chelsea Madsen.
My name is Rachel Tyrell.
Lecter Morales.
I think the big thing is I thought that generational theory was just about like firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, but I realized it's a much larger thing than that. But that's the microcosm to the macrocosm. So yeah, I think that's interesting that there's different time periods and personalities to different generations and how that affects generations that are being brought up by previous generations.
For me personally, I'm writing in a character voice, and the character is going through generations that I've never experienced personally. So it's a great resource to kind of get myself into that mindset and think about, the political things that would be going on, then how as you're growing and how you age, how that stuff can affect you in different ways.
I think in particular, having to realize that you could almost look at it as patterns were developing, patterns were forming in each of the generations that were previous to us. And how in some cases that those generations could use a historical context to explain something of future relevance.
Well, now that we have heard a little bit from my colleagues about what they learned during the workshop, I would love to share with you how I've grown after having facilitated the learning experience. And so I would say, as a developmental psychologist, I would see my role as being a storyteller. And I love characters, I love characteristics. And currently I am writing my 4th musical, which will premiere at the end of this year, called Fathers. And it is about 3 gay men who are in the same family, but they're all from different generations. And so, I realized when I was doing personal sharing during the workshop that that was probably why I gravitated to generational theory out of all the theories that I've learned this semester dealing with developmental psychology over the lifespan. And that's because, there's just so many interesting ways to look at characters and to write more details about characters based on the American events happening at the time and the time that they lived in, and their parents and their family, and how all the generations interact. And so the other cool experience that happened during the workshop is that I realized through all of this personal sharing and relating to generational theory was that because of my educational background, I really can provide an interesting and valuable skill set for other professionals in the theater industry here in Seattle. And that was kind of inspiring for me, because a lot of the time when I do study psychology, I think, oh, this is just for me, this is for my own purposes of, satisfying my own curiosities. But really, at the end of the day, everything that I've learned in developmental psychology is making me a more well-rounded professional who can help people in a real way. And I think I accomplished that during this workshop. But one question I did ask the writers was whether they would use generational theory as a starting point or a guide for them in future writing projects. And this is what they had to say.
I think so. I think that it will really help with my character development of the relationships of the different characters that I'm going to be writing in the future. So I think that it'll be a nice way to go back and see how those different generations and those different age gaps would all meet together and why they butt heads and all those different things. So
current, yes, and future, yes, especially when it comes to acting and creating a character. It's going to be extremely helpful to decide what makes that character, what kind of space they grow up in, and what makes that character tick, and why it's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how it is able to help imbue character work with more interesting layers in a larger context, because we look at characters sort of in their little world, but we need to see what the big picture is, and that kind of gives us a little bit more information to make that a more authentic character and believable to an audience.
Well, after listening to my colleagues discuss how generational theory can help them become better writers, and after thinking about my own personal experiences academically, I realized that generational theory had reinvigorated me as an educational psychologist. I actually started my Master's of Arts in Educational Psychology, but changed programs a year later when I felt like I didn't have a place in the field. So much about the beginning theories that were created under psychology, I personally felt like gay people were treated like diseased, less than human beings, and it was just very difficult for me to get past that. And but after having dived farther into generational theory with my colleagues, I kind of came to the conclusion that I don't have to sign up for every theory that I learn about, but there's something to be learned in every theory. It's making me want to go back and look over a lot of the theories and theorists that I've learned this semester and in previous years, and kind of see it from this new perspective, and see how that can change me professionally as well. So it was just a really exciting experience, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do it, and I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you so much, and have a great day.